Prince Andrew reportedly told disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, "We're in this together," urging him to keep in touch in a leaked email from 20...
Few families in Britain stir as much controversy as the House of York. For years, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson have been permanent fixtures in the press, representing both the glamour and the disgrace of royalty. Now, a new storm is brewing, but this time, the focus has shifted. Their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, once viewed as the innocent representatives of a more contemporary monarchy, are now facing accusations that they have inherited more than just their parents' titles. A recent report alleges they have also adopted their sense of entitlement and their propensity for troubling social alliances, with one source claiming the sisters have surrounded themselves with shady friends and display a level of privilege reminiscent of Andrew and Sarah. This allegation strikes at the core of debates about royal advantage. Indeed, any conversation about Beatrice and Eugenie must first acknowledge the immense and inescapable shadow cast by their parents.
That Prince William does want to see his cousins take on a bit more of an informal role when it comes to engagements. This idea of a slimmed-down monarchy, I think, might start to be a thing of the past, particularly because we have the Princess of Wales out of...
Prince Andrew, once hailed as the Queen's handsome and courageous son, a dashing Falklands War hero, now exists in a state of utter disgrace. His catastrophic BBC Newsnight interview, his subsequent retreat from public life, and his enduring links to scandal have made his reputation entirely toxic. Sarah Ferguson, for her part, has long been a target for tabloid mockery while simultaneously navigating the fallout from her own indulgences, from the infamous toe-sucking incident of the 1990s to her well-documented financial difficulties and the legendary cash-for-access sting operation. She has spent years precariously balanced between efforts to restore her standing and the constant threat of complete ruin.
Duo. The King's nieces, Beatrice and Eugenie, were on the cover of a magazine this week and they were described as the royal family's secret weapons. Did you write that headline?
I have to say, it's a bit of a journalistic cliche. I think secret weapons that we may...
It was within this environment of immense wealth, privilege, and constant publicity, as well as relentless controversy, that Beatrice and Eugenie were raised. Their childhood in Windsor offered some shelter, yet they could not be fully insulated from their parents' turbulent marriage, divorce, and financial scandals. To the public, they were the sweet-natured daughters of the Duke and Duchess of York, but within palace walls, sources indicate a growing concern that the girls had internalized the same unshakable sense of entitlement that has long characterized their parents. As reported by the Daily Mail, several royal insiders have described the sisters as possessing an entitled attitude, mirroring the arrogance often linked to Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. The allegations are broad, encompassing everything from tone-deaf exhibitions of their privilege to maintaining dubious friendships with socialites, financiers, and others connected to scandal. One insider quoted in the report asserted that both Beatrice and Eugenie are entirely detached from reality, existing within elite social circles, protected by their wealth and connections, and apparently oblivious to how their actions are perceived by the general public.
Duo. The King's nieces, Beatrice and Eugenie, were on the cover of a magazine this week and they were described as the royal family's secret weapons. Did you write that headline?
I have to say, it's a bit of a journalistic cliche. I think secret weapons that we may...
The article does not allege direct involvement in misconduct, but rather connects them to a network of family and friends with controversial reputations, individuals whose business dealings and personal conduct have drawn skepticism from both aristocratic and financial circles. This echoes the long-standing criticism leveled against their parents, a recurring pattern of trusting and forming alliances with people whose motivations appear primarily self-serving. The most damning accusation is that Beatrice and Eugenie have failed to learn from their parents' public downfalls and have instead perpetuated their habits by privately defending them, socializing with similar types of individuals, and demonstrating what one observer termed a blithe disregard for consequence. While Princess Beatrice works in finance and technology ventures, and Eugenie in the art world, both leading what they describe as normal, career-driven lives complete with mortgages and children, their critics contend that their personal definition of normal is profoundly disconnected from the economic reality experienced by most British citizens.
But I still don't think we're going to be seeing Princess Anne, you know, on the front page of any newspaper, because she doesn't, sadly, bring that glamour. You know, she does bring clout, and we do love, as we said earlier, the female members of the royal family. It is nice to see them, no matter.
Their lifestyle is frequently cited as evidence of their privileged position. Both reside in multi-million-pound homes, Beatrice in a Cotswolds property acquired with assistance from her husband's affluent family, and Eugenie in a grace and favor apartment at Kensington Palace. Their lives involve luxurious vacations, attendance at exclusive events, and immersion within the same upper-echelon social circles that have historically kept the York family in the public eye. Those close to them describe the sisters as genuinely kind, warm, and diligent. However, critics maintain that they enjoy immense unearned privilege without corresponding accountability, arguing that they are largely insulated from the severe consequences that would befall a less connected public figure for similar choices. In essence, they may hold jobs, but they remain royals, and that status grants them a perpetual level of comfort and access unimaginable to the average person. The core of the criticism, therefore, is less about their specific actions and more about what they symbolize, the persistent, insulated bubble of aristocratic entitlement. A particularly sensitive aspect of these accusations involves their social network, as the York sisters are reported to maintain friendships with individuals who have been involved in significant controversies, moving in a social circle described as a revolving door for the ambitious and the notorious.
With an incredible mum as a children's author, so stories really.
Their social circle has repeatedly included financiers, with opaque sources of wealth, and celebrities of dubious reputation. This pattern is not new. The York family has a long-standing history of mingling with affluent outsiders, seeking to convert their proximity to royalty into social or business influence. Defenders of Beatrice and Eugenie counter that they are merely gregarious and kind-hearted individuals who form bonds based on personal character rather than media perception. However, critics perceive this apparent naivete as a dangerous repetition of the poor judgment that led to their father's downfall. One insider characterized their network as a constant cycle of the ambitious and the notorious, a discomforting reflection of their parents' social world in the 1990s, which was defined by lavish parties, private jet travel, and the ultra-wealthy. Some royal observers propose an alternative theory. For the sisters, these relationships may be less about extravagance and more a strategy for maintaining relevance in elite circles that still covet the prestige of a royal title, even as the monarchy's official presence contracts.
Do know about Prince Andrew and the businessman and convicted child offender Jeffrey Epstein. We know Prince Andrew got to know Jeffrey Epstein in 1999. We know that he...
The fundamental issue these allegations provoke is a philosophical one. Is a sense of entitlement a consciously learned behavior, an unconsciously inherited family trait, or simply an unavoidable consequence of being born into a system of hereditary privilege? While it is true that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have carried the immense unchosen burden of their royal titles since birth, it is equally undeniable that they have reaped the vast social and material benefits that accompany them. From a critical perspective, they appear to have internalized their parents' worldview, a presumption of exceptionalism that operates on the assumption that societal norms are flexible for them, that opportunities will be granted without question, and that public disapproval is merely a temporary inconvenience. The central tragedy of their situation may be their apparent powerlessness to break free from the gravitational pull of the York family's tarnished legacy. Every concerted effort they make to redefine their public personas, whether through establishing professional careers, engaging in philanthropic work, or focusing on their roles as mothers, is almost instantly eclipsed by a new wave of headlines dredging up their parents' controversies, their own unearned advantages, or their associations with dubious acquaintances. And whereas other branches of the royal family have successfully cultivated a more contemporary and relatable image, the Yorks seem condemned to a relentless loop of disgrace and subsequent justification. It is crucial to note, however, that this damning media portrayal is not universally accepted. Indeed, friends and defenders of the sisters have vehemently pushed back against these narratives, characterizing them as profoundly unjust and misleading. This perspective argues that when the extraordinary circumstances of their birth are taken into account, Beatrice and Eugenie have cultivated lives of remarkable normality and personal responsibility. Both have maintained consistent careers in the private sector, entered into marriages based on genuine affection rather than dynastic obligation, and have deliberately chosen to live with a much lower public profile than the senior, working members of the royal family. Their supporters point to their dedication as mothers and their genuine commitment to charitable causes as evidence of their substantive, rather than purely ceremonial, contributions. Furthermore, many astute royal commentators observe that a significant portion of the public's criticism directed at the sisters is misattributed. It is rooted less in any specific transgression of their own and more in a deep-seated resentment toward their father, Prince Andrew. His actions have, through guilt by association, cast a long and inescapable shadow over their reputations, creating a profound sense that they are being unfairly punished for their father's sins and condemned for the simple human act of remaining loyal to a parent. This dynamic illustrates a harsh truth of modern royalty, as summarized by a former courtier: in the world of the monarchy, perception is reality, and public image is the ultimate currency. If an individual's public identity becomes inextricably linked with scandal, factual innocence or personal merit offers little protection from the damage. The ongoing York saga, therefore, transcends the personal fortunes of Beatrice and Eugenie and prompts larger, more structural questions about the future of the institution itself. King Charles III has consistently championed a vision for a slimmed-down monarchy, a more efficient, cost-effective institution, narrowly focused on duty and service, consciously moving away from the perception of indulgence and privilege that has historically plagued it.
I mean, did you take the money? At one stage you had $40,000 cash sitting in front of you. Did you take it?
Absolutely, yes. And it was given to me and I got it in the car and then returned it straight away.
Once the scandal broke?
As soon as I knew it was a scandal, not once it broke.
The York branch of the family, through its recurrent entanglements in scandal and its unabashed embrace of a life defined by hereditary privilege, has come to personify the very archetype of the bloated traditional monarchy that the envisioned, more streamlined royal model explicitly aims to leave behind as a relic of the past. This necessary evolution away from grandeur and towards relatable service is not merely an aesthetic choice but a fundamental strategic imperative. If the House of Windsor, as an institution, hopes to preserve any lasting measure of public trust and relevance in a modern skeptical age where the optics of unearned wealth, when coupled with a perceived lack of tangible contribution or public accountability, become increasingly toxic and politically dangerous. While Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie may have been deliberately sidelined from the core group of working royals and thus do not carry out official duties funded by the sovereign grant, they nevertheless continue to bear the weight and distinction of their royal titles, a status that inherently and perhaps unfairly, consequently, every time they are perceived through their actions or associations as embodying a sense of entitlement, indulging in careless luxury, or aligning themselves with controversial figures, they inadvertently provide powerful and easily weaponized ammunition to the growing chorus of critics and abolitionists who argue that the entire monarchical structure is an anachronistic bastion of inequality, thereby demonstrating that the stakes of their personal conduct extend far beyond their individual reputations and directly impact the fragile collective credibility and the very survival of the centuries-old institution they represent. In recent weeks, the seemingly dormant but perpetually smoldering scandal surrounding the York family's troubling associations has been violently reignited by a fresh wave of disclosures, this time casting a particularly harsh and unflattering light on Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, and by inescapable extension her former husband, Prince Andrew, as newly unveiled email correspondences have thrust them back into the center of the Jeffrey Epstein maelstrom, thereby adding a potent and sharply painful new layer to the ongoing narrative that their daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, are being forced to contend with a bitter inheritance of not merely aristocratic privilege, but also profound familial disgrace. The core of this new firestorm revolves around a specific and damning 2011 email published by a British tabloid, allegedly sent from Fergie to the convicted sex offender, in which she effusively refers to him as a dearest friend and offers a profuse apology for her previous public statements that had sought to distance herself from him, a communication that, on its surface, appears to directly and blatantly contradict her long-standing claims of having severed all ties with the disgraced financier following his initial criminal conviction. In a desperate attempt to contain the catastrophic damage to her reputation, her spokesperson has advanced a mitigating explanation, asserting that the email was composed and sent under a state of extreme duress immediately following what was characterized as a terrifying, Hannibal Lecter-style phone call from Epstein himself, during which he allegedly issued a menacing threat to destroy her utterly unless she publicly retracted her condemnations, a claim that, whether wholly believed or met with public skepticism, paints a picture of the shadowy intimidation tactics at play within Epstein's orbit. The repercussions from this latest revelation have been both immediate and severe, further cementing the Yorks' public image as a nexus of poor judgment and scandalous entanglements, thereby intensifying the scrutiny on the entire family and reinforcing the perception that the younger generation, Beatrice and Eugenie, are perpetually burdened by the toxic legacy of their parents' choices, a legacy that now threatens to overshadow their own attempts to build respectable, independent lives, and in the broader context, continues to serve as a major liability for a monarchy desperately trying to present a modern, accountable, and scandal-free facade to a disillusioned public. The immediate and tangible fallout from this email leak has been severe and publicly humiliating for Sarah Ferguson, as multiple esteemed charities, once willing to leverage her profile for their causes, have moved with swift and decisive force to sever their official links with her, including prominent institutions like the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation and the Teenage Cancer Trust, which have explicitly dropped her patronage, citing the profound reputational risk and the fundamental inappropriateness of her having referred to a convicted sex offender as a dearest friend and trusted confidant, a move that from a public relations standpoint was not just damaging but utterly untenable, forcing these organizations into a necessary act of triage to protect their own integrity and the trust of their donors. A dramatic and precipitous reversal of fortune for Fergie, who had long been painstakingly cultivating a public image as a resilient, sympathetic, and philanthropically dedicated figure working to redeem herself from past financial scandals, only to see that carefully reconstructed reputation severely undermined by this re-emergence of her Epstein association. Compounding the York family's crisis, this fresh wave of scrutiny has also crashed down once more upon Prince Andrew, with newly released evidence from the legal proceedings, a 2011 email he personally wrote to Epstein, revealing a disturbingly chummy and collaborative tone, including the phrase "we are in this together," and a suggestion that they would play some more soon, a communication that not only reinforces the perception of their deeply entwined relationship but also creates a striking and damning juxtaposition with his later flat denials of any close friendship. While the timing of this disclosure is particularly catastrophic, as it resurfaces precisely when the institution can least afford another self-inflicted wound, thereby ensuring that the toxic cloud of the Epstein scandal continues to hang over the entire York branch, suffocating any attempts at rehabilitation and proving that the consequences of their past associations are not just a historical footnote, but a continuously unfolding disaster with the power to destroy reputations and derail charitable endeavors in the present. The profoundly damaging nature of this specific 2011 email from Prince Andrew is exponentially magnified by its immediate temporal context, having been sent a mere 24 hours after the publication of that now infamous photograph depicting him with his arm around a young Virginia Giuffre, flanked by Ghislaine Maxwell, an image that was already generating a firestorm of public controversy and raising urgent, uncomfortable questions about the depth of his associations, thereby making the tone and content of his subsequent message not merely ill-advised but seemingly defiant of the growing scandal. Within this correspondence, his choice to sign off with the formal and official designation of His Royal Highness the Duke of York, KG, Knight of the Garter, imbues the exchange with a chilling dissonance, a jarring juxtaposition of the lofty, state-sanctioned formality of his royal title against the deeply sordid and informal familiarity of the subject matter. As if he were conducting personal business on institutional letterhead, thereby leveraging the Crown's authority in a private communication with a convicted criminal. Most critically, this piece of evidence delivers a potentially fatal blow to his long-maintained and legally strategic public position that he had decisively severed all ties with Jeffrey Epstein by December 2010. For this email powerfully suggests that, far from a clean break, he may have maintained at the very least a covert line of communication for months afterward, an accusation that, if accepted by the court of public opinion, completely eviscerates his already tenuous claims of personal accountability, transparency, and genuine reform. When these two separate email revelations, Fergie's fawning apology and Andrew's chummy solidarity, are taken together, they perform a dangerous alchemy, fusing the past and present scandals of the York family into a single inescapable narrative of poor judgment and entitlement, proving that this toxicity is no longer contained to the isolated historical missteps of Prince Andrew alone, but has now been conclusively demonstrated to be a shared familial burden, a pattern of behavior that ensnares both former spouses and, by heartbreaking extension, threatens to permanently define the legacy and prospects of the next generation. The corrosive fallout from these parallel email scandals now conclusively demonstrates that the toxic cloud of the Epstein Association is not, and never was, a singular burden borne solely by Prince Andrew, but has instead expanded its reach to envelop Sarah Ferguson as well, thereby exposing a deeply troubling and consistent pattern of private, obsequious communication with the financier that clashes painfully and irrevocably with their carefully curated public denials and purported moral stances, creating a devastating credibility chasm for the entire York family unit. For their daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, this dual revelation tragically deepens the inescapable taint of their inheritance, transforming abstract privilege into a legacy of concrete scandal, where the long-standing public complaints about aristocratic entitlement gain devastating new texture and an undeniable evidentiary basis, no longer reliant on speculation, but now proven through the family protagonist's own incriminating words, which betray a continuity of association and a disturbing comfort level with Epstein that persisted far beyond what was ever publicly admitted. The Fergie email scandal, when viewed in tandem with the newly scrutinized Andrew Epstein exchange, effectively authorizes and empowers a much darker, more persistent public narrative, one that suggests the Yorks as a family possibly never quite escaped the gravitational pull of their Epstein connections, that their disavowals were performative rather than substantive, and that this entire sordid chapter is not a closed book from a bygone era, but a continuing story of poor judgment and entangled loyalties that continues to hemorrhage credibility, jeopardize charitable work, and cast a long, unforgiving shadow over the future of the entire York line within the precarious modern monarchy. And if the past remains stubbornly alive, perpetually resurrected not by mere rumor, but by the cold, hard evidence of these unearthed private messages, then the long-standing accusations that the sisters perceived entitlement is an actively inherited trait, a behavioral and ethical legacy passed down through example and environment, rather than just a symbolic byproduct of their titles, acquire a new and devastating potency, moving from abstract criticism to a seemingly verified character flaw documented in their parents' own correspondence. Whether the public ultimately judges Beatrice and Eugenie as genuinely entitled or profoundly misunderstood, as socially naive or strategically calculating in their own right, they now undeniably stand at a precarious crossroads, trapped between two diametrically opposed familial legacies. On one side, their parents' generation, which often appeared to court the flashbulbs of fame and the notoriety of scandal in equal destructive measure, treating public life as a personal stage for drama and indulgence, and on the other, the enduring example of their grandfather's generation, which, for all its flaws, fundamentally understood that respect was commanded not through headlines or wealth, but through a lifetime of quiet, dutiful service and immense personal restraint. Now these two women are left to navigate this impossible inheritance in a brutally modern world where image is everything, and the line between public and private has been utterly erased, a world where a single misjudged friendship, one ill-timed photograph posted on social media, or an association with a controversial figure can instantly reignite the very same incendiary headlines and toxic narratives that their parents spent a lifetime trying and failing to outrun. Perhaps then, the real and most poignant question hanging over Beatrice and Eugenie is not the reductive one of whether they are personally entitled, but the far more tragic and complex one of whether they, despite their best efforts and personal merits, can ever truly escape the long, inescapable, and deeply stained shadow cast by the House of York, a shadow that their parents' actions have ensured is now a permanent part of the monarchy's landscape.